After I asked for only $100 to help pay for my medication, my daughter-in-law looked at me coldly and said, "You bring nothing but expenses to this family." My son laughed at her words, and that was the moment I decided to stop being quiet. I looked straight at them and said calmly, "Then the $7,000 mortgage payment ends today." Ryan nearly choked and Natalie's smile vanished. She turned toward him, her voice shaking as she whispered, "Mortgage? You said this house was paid off. Let me tell you how we got to that moment. My name is Beatrice Whitaker, though everyone calls me Ellie. I am 67 years old, widowed for the past 3 years, and apparently, according to my daughter-in-law, I am now considered a burden. That's quite something, isn't it? Everything began in the most ordinary way. I had been feeling unwell for weeks. Aching joints, constant fatigue, all the usual problems that come with age. My doctor prescribed a new medication that could ease the pain, but it wasn't covered by Medicare. The monthly cost was $100, which may sound small, but when you live on a fixed income, every cent matters. So there I was, spending Christmas morning at Ryan and Natalie's beautiful 4-bedroom colonial home in the suburbs of Connecticut. The place looked like something out of a holiday magazine. The tree glittered with gold ornaments, the smell of cinnamon rolls filled the air, and presents towered beneath the branches. My grandchildren, Lily and Jacob, aged 12 and 10, were gleefully shredding wrapping paper. I waited for the noise to quiet before approaching Ryan. "Sweetheart," I began softly, "I hate to bring this up today, but I could use a bit of help covering my new prescription. It's only $100 a month." The room froze. Natalie lifted her head from her phone, one perfectly shaped eyebrow rising in irritation. "Are you being serious right now, Beatrice?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "It's for my arthritis medication," I explained quietly, feeling my cheeks warm. "The insurance doesn't." Before I could finish, Natalie cut me off. "You bring nothing but costs to this family," she said sharply, every word like a shard of glass. "First the emergency room visit last month, then the car repair you needed help with, and now this. When will it stop?" I stood in silence, stunned. In 3 years of living alone, I had asked for help exactly 3 times. But apparently that was 3 times too many. My son Ryan, the same boy I raised by myself after his father passed away, the boy I worked double shifts to send to college, looked at his wife and laughed. Not nervously, not out of discomfort, but with genuine amusement. Something inside me hardened. "You're absolutely right, Natalie," I said evenly. "I contribute nothing but costs, so let's correct that." I smiled faintly. "The $7,000 mortgage payment I've been making on this house stops right now." Ryan's face drained of color. He nearly spat out his coffee. Natalie's expression shifted from smugness to confusion and finally to pale horror in a matter of seconds. "Mortgage," she repeated, her voice unsteady. "You told me the house was fully paid off. You said your mother left you money when she died, remember?" Ryan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His lips moved like a fish gasping for air. That was when the truth began to unravel. Natalie's perfect holiday morning was crumbling before her eyes, and I will admit, I took a small guilty pleasure in watching it happen. "Ryan," Natalie said quietly, the danger in her tone unmistakable. "What mortgage?" "I can explain," he stammered, setting down his coffee with trembling hands. "Mom, please don't." "Don't what?" I interrupted. "Don't tell your wife the truth? That you've been lying to her for 2 years about how you could afford this house." Natalie's eyes widened. 2 years, she said, her voice rising. "Ryan, we bought this house 2 years ago. You told me you had $80,000 from your mother's inheritance for the down payment." "He did have $80,000, I added helpfully. "From my late husband's life insurance, the money I gave him as a gift when you both decided to move up from that apartment." Ryan shot me a desperate look, but Natalie was already putting the pieces together. "You told me your mother died when you were young," she whispered. "You said that's why Ellie wasn't your real mother, just your stepmother." The room went completely still except for the soft sound of Christmas music playing from Natalie's phone. Even the children stopped fidgeting with their toys, sensing the shift in atmosphere. I couldn't help it, I burst out laughing. "Stepmother," I said, amused. "Is that what you told her, Ryan?" His face turned a deep shade of red. "Mom, please," he muttered. "Oh, this is priceless. I continued. Natalie dear, I gave birth to this lying son of mine 32 years ago after 18 hours of labor. I still have the stretch marks to prove it. Natalie sank back into her chair like a puppet whose strings had been cut. You lied, she said in disbelief. You lied about your mother being dead. I didn't lie exactly, Ryan mumbled weakly. I just simplified things. Simplified. Natalie's voice trembled as she stood up. You let me believe your mother was dead for 8 years of our marriage. Not dead, Ryan said desperately. Just not around much. The scene was almost comical. I decided to give it one final push. Natalie, darling, did Ryan also simplify the part about my paying for Lily's piano lessons or Jacob's baseball gear? Or perhaps the family vacations to Florida every summer? Natalie's jaw dropped. The Disney trips? She gasped. He told me his company paid for those bonuses. Ryan blinked in confusion. My company? I work in accounting at a mid-sized firm. When have they ever handed out bonuses like that? I watched as Natalie's carefully curated world shattered in real time. Every false story Ryan had spun collapsing around her. And I'll admit, after years of being treated as nothing but an inconvenience, it was remarkably satisfying to watch it all unfold. Natalie's tone was sharp enough to slice the silence in half when she said, Ryan Daniel Whitaker. I almost smiled. I had to give her credit for using his full name. The surest sign that trouble was about to erupt. How much money has your mother been giving us? She demanded. Ryan turned to me with a pleading look, but I only smiled back sweetly. Go on, son, I said in a voice as gentle as honey. Tell your wife exactly how much your dear old mother has contributed to your picture-perfect life. The quiet that followed felt like a funeral march. Ryan was sweating through his festive sweater, while Natalie stared at him as if she were looking at a stranger. I must admit, it was the most entertaining Christmas morning I'd had in years. Well, Natalie pressed, her voice cold enough to frost over the windows. Ryan swallowed hard. It's not as bad as it sounds, he muttered. How much? Natalie repeated. I decided to help move things along. After all, time was ticking, and I planned to visit my friend B later that afternoon. Should I tell her? I asked lightly. Or would you prefer the honor of confessing yourself? Ryan shot me a furious glance. Mom, you're not helping. Oh, but I think I am, I said smoothly. Natalie deserves to know exactly what she's been living with. Natalie rose from her chair and walked toward the window, gazing out at their pristine lawn, the same one I'd been paying for through a monthly landscaping service. I chose to keep that particular revelation for another time. Ryan exhaled heavily. The mortgage is $7,000 a month, he said at last. Mom's been covering it since we bought the house. And, I prompted, the utilities, the landscaping. Ryan's shoulders slumped in defeat. And the car payments on the BMW. Natalie spun around so fast her hair whipped over her shoulder. My car? You told me you got a raise. I did get one, Ryan said weakly. Just not that big of a raise. I was quietly impressed. He had managed to fabricate an entire lifestyle out of thin air. I had raised him better than this, but clearly, he had misplaced his sense of integrity somewhere along the way. Natalie's voice dropped to a whisper. How much altogether? Ryan glanced at me again, his face slick with sweat. I studied my manicured nails, polished at my own expense, naturally. About $12,000 a month, he mumbled. Natalie's mouth fell open. $12,000? Ryan, that's $144,000 a year. That's more than both our salaries combined. I was going to tell you, he began. When? She snapped. When your mother died and the money stopped coming? Upstairs, the children had quietly disappeared, likely sensing that Christmas morning had turned into something far darker than wrapping paper and cinnamon rolls. Natalie, please, Ryan pleaded. You have to understand, when we got married you had expectations. The house, the cars, the lifestyle. I just wanted to give you what you wanted. With my mother's money, I added pointedly. With family money, Ryan corrected quickly, his voice small. Natalie laughed. A hollow bitter sound. Family money? You mean the money you swore didn't exist? From a mother you told me was either your stepmother or dead. I stood, smoothing the skirt of my holiday dress. Well, I said with a polite smile, this has been illuminating. but I really should be heading home. Wait, Natalie said sharply. Why now? Why are you telling me all this today? I reached for my purse and keys. Because, dear Natalie, you told me I contribute nothing but costs to this family. I simply wanted to show you what life looks like when those costs disappear. Ryan's voice broke in desperation. You can't just stop paying, Mom. The house payment is due next week. Then I suggest you figure out how to come up with $7,000 before then, I said cheerfully. Maybe Natalie can pick up a few extra shifts. Or you could ask your company for one of those bonuses you've been bragging about. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. And Ryan, next time you decide to rewrite family history, remember who raised you and who taught you to be better than this. The drive home was peaceful, the winter sky pale and quiet. I even stopped for coffee and treated myself to a Christmas cookie from my favorite bakery. But the calm didn't last. When I returned home, something unexpected waited for me. A thick manila envelope on my porch, my name written in Natalie's neat handwriting. Inside, I found financial records that chilled me to the bone. I thought I knew every detail of Ryan and Natalie's finances. After all, I had funded their lives for the past 2 years. But these documents revealed something much darker. Credit card statements showed $67,000 in debt. There was a second mortgage on the very house I'd been paying for, taken out 6 months earlier without my knowledge. Their bank accounts held less than $900 combined. And then came the worst discovery of all, a life insurance policy on me. A $500,000 policy Ryan had taken out 18 months ago, naming himself the sole beneficiary. I sat in my living room surrounded by paperwork that reeked of betrayal, feeling something I had never experienced in 67 years. Genuine fear of my own son. My phone rang. It was Natalie. Did you get the envelope? She asked without any greeting. I did, I said slowly. Where did you find all this? Ryan's office, she replied. He was hiding the paperwork in his desk. I demanded his supervisor let me in. Turns out he's been forging your signature on loan applications. I flipped through the pages again, my heart pounding. Natalie, some of these show your name as a co-signer. Are you saying you didn't sign anything? Not one, she said, her voice trembling. Not the second mortgage, not the credit cards, not the life insurance policy on you. Ellie, I think Ryan's been planning something. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of something? The life insurance policy was taken out right after you started getting dizzy spells last year, Natalie said quietly. Remember when you ended up in the emergency room? Ryan insisted on driving you to every appointment, staying through all the tests. I remembered. Every detail. Natalie, I said hesitantly, are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting, she interrupted. I'm warning you. Be careful. Very careful. After we hung up, I sat in my recliner, staring at the Christmas tree I had decorated by myself for the 3rd year in a row. The same tree Ryan and Natalie had been too busy to help with, despite all the money I had poured into their lives. My phone buzzed again, a text from Ryan. Mom, we need to talk. Coming over now. I looked down at the life insurance policy in my lap. $500,000. Enough to erase their debts and keep their lifestyle alive for years. Ryan had once been my sweet boy, the child who brought me dandelions and called them flowers, the teenager who worked part-time jobs to help with bills when times were tough. When had my son turned into this stranger? Someone capable of forgery and lies spoken as easily as breathing. 20 minutes later, I heard the metallic click of a key turning in my front door. His key. The one I'd given him years ago for true emergencies. Apparently, in Ryan's mind, my refusal to keep funding his deceit now qualified as one. Mom, he called, his voice strained. In the living room, I answered, quickly sliding the incriminating documents behind the cushion of my chair. Ryan appeared in the doorway looking exhausted and frayed at the edges. His once neat Christmas sweater was creased, and his hair stuck out wildly as if he had been running his hands through it for hours. He looked like a man watching his entire world collapse in slow motion. Good, he said without even a greeting. We need to fix this. Natalie's talking about lawyers, about divorce, about pressing charges for those signatures. Maybe she should, I replied coolly. Ryan's face drained of color. Mom, you don't understand. If this gets out, I'll lose everything. My job, my license, my reputation. You should have thought about that before you started committing fraud. It's not fraud, he snapped. It's family. You're my mother. Family helps family. I stood, all 5 feet 4 inches of me, and met his eyes squarely. Family doesn't take out life insurance policies on one another, Ryan. He froze, his face turning a stark shade of white. You know about that? I know about all of it, I said evenly. The second mortgage, the credit cards, the forged signatures, every last bit. Ryan collapsed onto the couch, shoulders sagging. I can explain. No, Ryan, I said softly. You can't explain this away. Not this time. That was when I told him what I had decided to do next. But instead of showing fear or remorse, his expression hardened into something cold and foreign. You can't, he said flatly. I won't let you. Let me. I gave a dry, humorless laugh. Ryan, you seem to be confused. I am your mother, not your employee. And I'm your only family, he shot back sharply. When you're old and sick and need someone to take care of you, Natalie and I are all you'll have left. The threat landed exactly where he aimed it. But Ryan had underestimated his mother. Actually, I said, sitting back down with deliberate calm, that's where you're wrong. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I had recently added. This is the elder care attorney B recommended. I've been doing some research about elder abuse, financial exploitation, and what happens to sons who forge their mother's signature on legal documents. Ryan's confidence faltered. You wouldn't. I already did, I replied. And I also called my bank this morning. It's astonishing what you learn when you ask the right questions. Like how someone's been using my debit card for online purchases I didn't authorize. That was just for household stuff, he said quickly. Things for the kids. Identity theft, Ryan, I said, my tone sharp. That's what it's called when you use someone else's financial information without permission. Ryan jumped to his feet, fists clenched. You're making a big mistake, Mom. The only mistake I made was trusting you. His face twisted with bitterness. Natalie put you up to this, didn't she? She's always been jealous. She can't stand that you love me more than her. I looked at the man standing in front of me, the same son who once picked wildflowers for me as a boy, and felt something deep inside me shatter. Ryan, I said quietly, I need you to leave. This is my inheritance you're playing with, he shouted. Dad's life insurance money, the house equity, it all belongs to me anyway. Your inheritance? I rose slowly to my feet. Ryan, let me explain what your inheritance truly is. I walked to my desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folder I'd hoped I would never need. Inside were legal papers Ryan had never seen. Documents drawn up long ago by lawyers he didn't know existed. Your father left everything to me, I said calmly. The house, the investments, the insurance policy, all of it. I was never legally obligated to share a penny with you. Ryan's face turned ghostly pale. That's not true. Dad would never. Your father watched you closely from the time you were 16, I interrupted. He saw how you treated money, how you always expected more without earning it. He worried about what would happen if you inherited everything too soon. I handed him a copy of the will. He left everything in my name, with instructions that I could provide for you only if I believed you were responsible enough to handle it. Ryan lunged to grab the papers, but I pulled them back. These are copies, I said coolly. The originals are in a safe deposit box you'll never access. His voice trembled with rage. You've been lying to me my entire life. I've been protecting you your entire life, I said quietly. But clearly, I should have protected myself instead. Ryan's phone buzzed. He looked down and his face went even paler. Natalie? I asked. He nodded numbly. What did she say? He handed me the phone. The text was short and devastating. Locks changed. Don't come home. Divorce papers filed. For a brief, fleeting moment, Ryan looked like the lost boy he'd been the day his father died. But it didn't last. His face hardened again, that same cold mask replacing any trace of remorse. This is all your fault, he said bitterly. If you just kept quiet. If I'd kept quiet, I interrupted, you'd still be lying to your wife and stealing from your mother. Ryan turned toward the door, pausing only long enough to throw one last sentence over his shoulder. You think you've won something here, Mom? You've just destroyed your only family. When you're dying alone in some nursing home, remember this conversation. When he was gone, I sat in silence, staring at the wrapped gifts under my Christmas tree. Presents for grandchildren I might never see again, and for a son who no longer felt like my own. Then the phone rang, breaking the stillness. "Mrs. Whitaker?" a voice said. "This is Detective Carter with the Connecticut State Police Financial Crimes Unit. We need to talk." My grip tightened around the phone. "About what?" "About your son, Ryan," the detective said, "and what appears to be a sophisticated fraud scheme involving elderly clients. You're not the only victim, Mrs. Whitaker." 20 minutes later, Detective Carter and his partner, Detective Harlow, sat in my living room reviewing the documents Natalie had unearthed. "How long has this been happening?" Carter asked. 2 years that I'm aware of," I replied. "But probably longer." Detective Harlow glanced up from the life insurance papers. "Mrs. Whitaker, we've actually been investigating your son for 3 months. It began when another elderly woman came forward, Mrs. Beatrice Lang. Your son was her financial advisor before switching to accounting. He'd been forging her signature on investment forms and transferring money into his own accounts." My blood turned to ice. "How much?" "Over $200,000, Harlow said gravely. "She's 81 years old, lives alone, and trusted your son completely." "Are there others?" I whispered. 3 more that we know of," Carter said. "All elderly widows, all living alone, all relying on Ryan to manage their finances." He leaned forward, his voice solemn. "Mrs. Whitaker, what your son did to you wasn't just a family betrayal. It's part of a long-running pattern of elder financial abuse. He's been targeting vulnerable seniors for years." I thought of all the times Ryan had helped with my bills, my banking, my investments, how I'd let him take over little by little because it felt easier to trust my son. Detective Harlow tapped the life insurance policy. "That's what first caught our attention," he said quietly. "It was the red flag that made us look closer at everything else. Taking out large life insurance policies on elderly relatives without their knowledge is rarely innocent. As Detective Harlow explained, it's often a red flag, a warning sign that the person behind it might be preparing for something much darker." "Mrs. Whitaker," he said gravely, "we've seen cases where financial exploitation escalates to physical harm when the perpetrator feels cornered or desperate." His words echoed in my mind as I remembered the cold, calculating look in Ryan's eyes when he'd walked out of my house earlier that evening. Had I been in danger all this time without realizing it? "What happens now?" I asked quietly. Detective Carter slid a notepad toward me. "We'll need your full cooperation. Every financial transaction, every forged document, every unauthorized withdrawal, we need it all documented. This case isn't just about you and your son. It's part of something larger." He handed me a business card. "Mrs. Whitaker, I want you to think about something. Ryan has been preying on elderly people for years. By coming forward, you're not only protecting yourself, you're helping stop him from hurting anyone else." After the detectives left, the silence in my living room felt heavier than ever. The truth was unavoidable now. Ryan wasn't simply a misguided son. He had become a predator, a man who had built his life on exploiting the vulnerable. My phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. It was a message from Natalie. "Ellie, I'm so sorry for everything. We need to talk." Before I could respond, a hard knock echoed through the house. I froze, glancing through the peephole. Ryan stood on my porch, his face twisted with fury. The detective's car must have tipped him off. His expression told me everything. I was no longer just the mother he'd deceived. I was the person who had destroyed his illusion of control. I kept the chain latched and opened the door only an inch. His eyes were wild, desperate. For the first time in my life, I was truly afraid of my own son. "Let me in, Mom. We need to talk," he said through gritted teeth. "I think we've said everything that needs saying," I replied firmly. "The cops were here, weren't they?" His tone shifted to something eerily calm. "I saw their car leaving." I stayed silent, but that was enough of an answer. "Mom, you have no idea what you've done," he said. "You don't know what you've started." "I didn't start any of this, Ryan," I said evenly. "You did." He leaned closer to the narrow gap, his breath hot against the doorframe. "Those detectives, they don't know the full story. They don't know about the gambling debts. My blood ran cold. What gambling debts? The people I owe money to, they're not the patient kind. If I can't pay them back. He let the threat hang like smoke between us. How much? I asked quietly. 80,000. Due next week. I closed my eyes for a moment. Even now, a small part of me, the part that still saw the boy who once brought me dandelions, wanted to help. But that part was fading fast. That's not my problem anymore, I said finally. Ryan's expression hardened. It'll be your problem when they come looking for their money. These aren't bill collectors, Mom. These are dangerous people. Then you'd better learn how to handle dangerous people, I said, voice steady. Because you're not getting another penny from me. He stepped back, the fury in his eyes now unmistakable. Fine. But remember, you chose this. Whatever happens next, it's on you. When he stormed off into the cold night, I locked the door, double-bolted it, and immediately called Detective Carter. Mrs. Whitaker, what's wrong? He answered. Ryan was just here, I said, trying to steady my voice. He mentioned gambling debts. $80,000 due in a week. There was a pause on the line. That explains a lot, Carter said grimly. Mrs. Whitaker, I need you to pack a bag. Tonight. We're putting you somewhere safe until we can arrest your son. You think he'd actually hurt me? I whispered. Mrs. Whitaker, desperate people do desperate things, he said softly. And your son just became very desperate. 2 hours later, I sat in a modest hotel room on the other side of town. The television flickered with breaking news while Detective Harlow sat nearby, arms crossed. The headline read, Local man arrested in elder fraud scheme. Ryan's mugshot filled the screen, his eyes hollow, his expression dazed. The reporter's voice narrated how police had arrested him during an underground poker game, caught trying to gamble money he didn't have. He didn't even make it 12 hours, Detective Harlow said with grim satisfaction. Desperation makes people reckless. But the story wasn't over. The reporter continued, Authorities believe this arrest is only the beginning of a larger investigation into organized elder financial fraud across the tri-state area. Harlow turned down the volume. Mrs. Whitaker, there's something else you need to know. A knock at the door signaled Detective Carter's arrival. His face was grave. Ryan wasn't working alone, he said. The words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean? He hesitated before speaking. This morning, we uncovered evidence linking Natalie to the operation. I stared at him. Natalie? You're saying she was involved? Not at first, Carter said. But at some point, she figured out what Ryan was doing. And instead of reporting him, she helped expand it. I felt sick. But she's the one who brought me the documents. She exposed him. Think about it, Carter said gently. How did she know exactly where to look? How did she know which papers to show you? The realization crept over me like ice. Natalie's sudden interest in my finances, her questions about my assets, her suggestion that Ryan handle all my banking. It hadn't been concern. It had been strategy. She was setting herself up, I murmured. Exactly, Carter confirmed. Our evidence shows she was planning to play the victim when Ryan got caught, keeping the house, protecting her assets, walking away clean. He handed me a tablet displaying screenshots of text messages between Ryan and Natalie. These are from 3 months ago. Natalie to Ryan. We need an exit strategy. Your mother's getting suspicious. And his reply, don't worry. I can handle my mother. Each message made my stomach turn. There were conversations about which elderly clients to target, updates on how much money Ryan had siphoned from each victim. Mrs. Whitaker, Detective Harlow said gently, Natalie filed for divorce yesterday, but not because she was horrified by Ryan's crimes. She filed because she knew we were closing in. How long have you been watching them? I asked faintly. 6 months, Carter said. Mrs. Beatrice Lang wasn't the first victim, just the first brave enough to come forward. He leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm. We need your help with one more thing. Natalie doesn't know we're on to her. She thinks she's in the clear. My heart tightened. What do you need me to do? We need you to meet with her, Carter said. Wear a wire. Get her to admit her role in the scheme. I thought about Natalie's perfect manicure, her sweet but insincere smile, The way she'd made me feel unwanted in my own family while plotting behind my back. I straightened my shoulders and met the detective's gaze. When do we start? The meeting was set for the next afternoon, in a quiet downtown coffee shop. One that would soon host the final confrontation of a family built on lies. Natalie had messaged earlier that morning, claiming she wanted to make things right and talk about how we could move forward as a family. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so grotesque. As I stepped into the coffee shop, a small recording device hidden beneath my sweater, I couldn't help but wonder how I had failed to see the truth about both my son and his wife, that they weren't victims of circumstance, but predators in designer clothing. Natalie was already there, immaculate as ever, her polished appearance betraying none of the chaos supposedly unraveling her life. She rose to greet me, arms open, and pulled me into a hug that felt rehearsed. "Ellie, I'm so glad you agreed to meet," she said with syrupy warmth. "Of course, dear," I replied evenly. "Family is family, isn't it?" Her smile faltered for a heartbeat before she recovered. "Exactly," she said. "And that's why I wanted to discuss our situation." "Our situation?" I asked, settling into my chair. "Well, with Ryan in jail," she began, voice heavy with performative sadness, "I'm going to need your help more than ever. The mortgage, the bills, the children's expenses. I can't handle all of it alone." I took a slow sip of coffee, marveling at her audacity. "I see. And what exactly are you proposing?" Natalie folded her hands, leaning forward as though delivering a business pitch. "I think we should make our arrangement official, legal even. You could sign over power of attorney to me, and I'll manage your finances properly. That way, everything stays organized." There it was. She wasn't finished stealing from me. She was simply trying to do it with paperwork this time. "That's very thoughtful of you, Natalie," I said pleasantly. "But why now? Why the sudden concern about my finances?" Her expression darkened for just a second before she smiled again. "Because Ryan kept you in the dark about so much, the debts, the loans, the obligations. You deserve someone you can trust to help you." "Someone I can trust," I echoed. "Like you." "Exactly like me," she said, her tone honeyed. That was when I decided to end the game. "Natalie," I said softly, "I know about the offshore accounts." Her face drained of color so quickly that for a moment I thought she might faint. Her cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down with shaking fingers. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. "The Cayman Islands account," I said calmly. "The one holding $247,000. The money from Mrs. Lang, Mrs. Crane, and the others." Natalie's mask shattered completely. Her hands trembled as she looked around the cafe, scanning for exits. "Did you really think the police wouldn't find it?" I continued. "When you're under federal investigation for financial crimes, Natalie, they look at everything, every transaction, every signature, every lie." "Ellie, you don't understand," she blurted. "Ryan forced me. He said if I didn't help him, he'd leave me with nothing." I was terrified. "So your solution was to steal from elderly people?" I asked. "To open secret accounts and lie to me for 2 years?" Tears began to spill down her cheeks, drawing stares from nearby customers. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. It was only temporary, just until Ryan got back on his feet." I leaned back, studying the woman who had shared holidays at my table, called me Mom, and smiled at me while plotting my financial destruction. "Natalie, what was the plan for me?" She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "The life insurance policy," I said. "The nursing home applications you filed in my name, claiming I was incompetent. What was the end game?" Her face turned the color of ash. "That was Ryan's idea," she whispered. "Was it also his idea?" I pressed. "To list you as my emergency contact, to search for facilities that would hand you legal authority over my finances?" For a long moment she said nothing. The coffee shop's chatter faded to a distant hum. She stared at me as though I'd suddenly become the ghost of every mistake she'd made. "How long have you been working with the police?" she asked finally. "Since yesterday," I said. "They've been watching both of you for months. Every phone call, every text, every transaction. They know everything." Natalie shot to her feet, nearly toppling her chair. "This is entrapment. You can't use anything I said." "You can hire every lawyer in Connecticut," I replied calmly. But it won't erase what you've just confessed to. Natalie grabbed her purse and started for the door, then spun around, her face twisted with hatred. You sanctimonious old witch, she hissed. You think you're innocent? You enabled all of it. Every time you wrote a check or paid a bill, you made this possible. You're right, I said evenly. I did enable it by trusting my family, by believing the people I loved would never steal from me. That was my mistake. Her lip curled into a snarl. Your mistake was thinking you mattered. You were never family. You were just a walking bank account. She stormed out, leaving me alone with my cooling coffee and the tiny recorder that had captured every word. Moments later, Detective Carter appeared at my table. We got it all, Mrs. Whitaker, he said, sliding into the seat opposite me. Every confession, every detail. What happens now? I asked quietly. Now we arrest Natalie, he said, and shut this operation down for good. We walked toward the exit, relief slowly beginning to settle in, until his phone rang. He answered, listening in silence for a few seconds, then turned to me, his face suddenly grave. Mrs. Whitaker, he said carefully, we have a problem. What is it? Ryan just made bail. My stomach dropped. How? Who would post bail for him? Someone with very deep pockets and very bad intentions, Carter said. As we sat in his unmarked car, he handed me a file. The money came from a man named Dominic Russo. Does that name mean anything to you? I shook my head, but a chill ran through me anyway. He runs one of the largest illegal gambling operations in the tri-state area, Carter explained. Loan sharking, money laundering, and now apparently elder fraud. We believe Ryan started small, stealing from you and a few clients, but when his gambling debts piled up, Russo offered him a deal. Work off the debt by feeding him new victims. My phone buzzed then, lighting up with a message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Ryan. Carter's eyes narrowed. He's not supposed to contact you. That's a direct violation of his bail. Another message arrived seconds later. Parking garage behind your hotel. Come alone or Natalie dies. My blood ran cold. They have Natalie, I whispered. That's impossible, Carter said. We arrested her an hour ago. Before I could respond, a third message came through. This one with a photograph attached. Natalie had sent a message earlier that afternoon, claiming she wanted to make things right, that we needed to talk about how to move forward as a family. Now I realized that family had become the most twisted word in my vocabulary. When the image came through, Natalie bound and gagged, her terrified eyes staring from what looked like a dim warehouse. Detective Carter was already reaching for his radio. All units, this is Detective Carter. We have a hostage situation. Suspect is Ryan Whitaker, armed and dangerous. I have to go, I said, grabbing for the door handle. Mrs. Whitaker, absolutely not, he snapped. That's exactly what he wants. It's a trap. He's desperate, cornered, and unpredictable. Natalie may be a terrible person, I said, my voice trembling but firm, but she doesn't deserve to die because of Ryan's choices. My phone rang before he could reply. Ryan's number. Answer it, Carter instructed quietly. Keep him talking, we're tracing the call. I took a deep breath. Ryan. Mom. His voice cracked with something between anger and despair. I'm sorry it came to this, I really am. But you left me no choice. Let Natalie go, I said quickly. She has children, your children. My children who I'll never see again because you destroyed my life, he snapped. I didn't destroy anything, Ryan, I said softly. You did that yourself. Maybe, he said bitterly, but you could have helped me fix it. Instead, you chose strangers over your own son. In the background, I could hear muffled sobs, Natalie's voice pleading. My heart clenched. What do you want, Ryan? I want my life back, he said. I want you to call Detective Carter and tell him you made it all up, that you lied about everything. I can't do that. Then Natalie dies and it'll be your fault. The line went dead. Carter barked orders into his radio, coordinating units. We'll find her, he assured me. But you stay put. No, I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. Ryan will never trust I'm alone if he sees police cars, but he might trust his mother. Mrs. Whitaker, don't. I met his gaze. Detective, I'm 67 years old. My son has manipulated, threatened, and stolen from me. I've already lost my family, my money, and my safety. But I will not let him add murder to that list. 20 minutes later, I walked into the parking garage alone, or at least appearing that way. Carter's team was positioned in shadows, but Ryan would only see me. He emerged from behind a pillar, looking wild-eyed and broken, a gun trembling in his hands. Where's Natalie? I asked quietly. Somewhere safe for now, he said. Ryan put the gun down. You're scaring me. Good, he hissed. Maybe now you'll finally listen. I raised my hand slowly, stepping closer. What do you want from me, son? I want you to fix this, he said. Call the cops and tell them you lied. Tell them I never forged anything. I can't do that, Ryan. Too many people know the truth. Then Natalie dies. No, I said, pulling out my phone and showing him the screen. She doesn't, because Natalie was never kidnapped. His brow furrowed. What? That photo you sent, I continued steadily. It's from a college play Natalie was in. The police verified it an hour ago. There is no warehouse, no hostage. There's only you standing here with a gun, threatening your mother. His hand faltered. His face flickered through confusion, anger, and then finally collapse. It was never real, was it? He whispered. The picture, the threats. I made it all up. When was the last time you slept, Ryan? I asked softly. He blinked, eyes glassy. I don't remember. Son, I said gently, stepping forward. You need help. Real help. Ryan's arm dropped to his side. The gun clattered to the concrete and skidded away. I ruined everything, he murmured. My marriage, my kids, my relationship with you. Everything. Within seconds, Carter's team surrounded him. They secured the weapon and handcuffed him, but Ryan didn't fight. He looked like a man who'd finally reached the end of a long, destructive road. Mrs. Whitaker, Carter said softly, are you all right? I looked at my son, my broken, exhausted son, and felt something unexpected. I'm fine, I said. We're all fine now.
6 months later, I sat in a courtroom as the judge delivered his ruling. Ryan Whitaker was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for elder fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Natalie received 4 years for aiding in his crimes. The other victims, Mrs. Lang, Mrs. Crane, and 3 more, sat beside me. Together, we'd formed an unlikely community, bound by betrayal but united in healing. When the judge asked if I had a statement, I stood slowly. Your Honor, I began, Ryan Whitaker is my son. I raised him, loved him, and trusted him with my future. His crimes didn't just take my money, they stole my sense of family and safety. But I want this court to understand Ryan's actions don't define us. I gestured toward the women beside me. Mrs. Lang has started a support group for victims. Mrs. Crane volunteers with senior legal aid. We've turned our pain into purpose. Ryan turned then, meeting my eyes for the first time since his arrest. For a brief moment, I saw the little boy he'd once been, the boy who believed in good things before greed consumed him. Your Honor, I continued, justice isn't just about punishment. It's about protection, making sure no one else endures what we have. I support this sentence, not from anger, but from hope. Hope that my son gets the help he needs, and that others will be spared. When it was over, I walked out into the soft spring sunlight, lighter than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed with a message from Lily, my granddaughter. Grandma, can I visit you this weekend? I miss you. Natalie had lost custody, and her parents had reached out to me. The children need their grandmother, they'd said. Their real grandmother. I smiled through tears and typed back, of course, sweetheart. I'll make your favorite cookies. That evening, I sat on my mortgage-free porch, reading a letter from Belang. She wrote about the elder fraud prevention program we were launching together, funded by the recovered money. We're going to save other families, she wrote. We're going to make our suffering matter. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought about everything I had lost and everything I had gained. A year ago, I believed family meant giving endlessly no matter the cost. Now I knew the truth. Real family is built on respect, honesty, and care. Ryan had taken my trust, my peace, and my security. But in doing so, he'd given me something unexpected: the strength to demand better, and the wisdom to know the difference between relatives and true family. My phone rang again. Lily's voice was bright and full of love. "Grandma, I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart," I said, my heart finally at peace. And for the first time in years, I meant it completely. I was free. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've ever survived betrayal, share your story below. Your voice matters.